Hello, Rams family. Welcome to Rams Latest, your daily source for everything in and out of the Rams house. I'm your host, Brady Petrik. Let's get into it. Well, the wait is finally over. The draft is upon us. Today's the last day for guesses and predictions before the first round picks are written into the history books. So, with that in mind, I wanted to do a breakdown of the different strategies that the Rams could use for their first three picks. I've done three different mock ups here based on the Rams' biggest positional needs to try and figure out what the first round pick will mean for later rounds in the draft. Now, I'm starting with my elite receiver board because this seems like the most likely path based on recent reporting. So going down the wide receiver board, it seems pretty clear that Carnell Tate is going to be taken in the top 10, maybe even the top 5, if recent reporting around the Titans is to be believed. And there's been a lot of noise recently that the Giants want to take Jordan Tyson with their new number 10 pick that they got in the Dexter Lawrence trade. So this domino of choices would leave Mekhi Lemon as the top prospect on the board by the time the Rams pick. That's assuming there's not a run at wide receiver, but we'll cover that in a bit. So looking at Mekhi Lemon, he's a strong route runner and he has quick footwork and great directional shifting and angle cutting abilities. He's good at twisting his body to make a catch and he doesn't mind taking a hit on the way down. These traits, combined with his stellar focus and ball tracking skills, give him the potential to earn QB trust pretty quickly and become a key contributor early in the season. So I like that pick at 13. However, if the Giants pick at number 10 shaked up the big board, there is a possibility for a run at receivers in the top 15 that could result in Mekhi Lemon being taken earlier, perhaps by a team like the Saints at number 8 or the Dolphins at 11, who could be looking for a splashy offensive ad. But if this happens, the Rams still have a solid option at this pick with Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M. So his release work off the line and his ability to separate are some of the best in his class, and he also has great vision and can find productive yards after the catch. And these are skills that'll help paper over some of his deficiencies like consistent drops throughout his college career. So the 13th pick is admittedly a little bit high for Concepcion right now on the board, but especially if there's going to be a run on wide receivers, then it might be an appropriate place to pick him. And to avoid a headache that other teams might have later in the draft, it could be worth maybe reaching a little bit at 13 for Concepcion as opposed to trying to find value in the second and third rounds at receiver. So if the Rams are able to lock up that wide receiver position early, they'll have the opportunity to make some smart grabs at their original draft positions. So going into the second round, I want to look at some places that the Rams might be able to start sniffing around if they aren't so busy working for a receiver. And I really like the tight end fits that the Rams have around their 61st pick in the second round. So some tight ends who are available there are Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. He has a big frame to catch targets and still has impressive speed to match. So Stowers was actually recruited as a QB to start, and his history at the position gives him a leg up when reading coverages and adjusting routes in real time. And another thing about Stowers is he comes to practice early and he stays late, which sounds a lot like the Stafford, Cup, Puka energy that the Rams like to see from their cornerstone offensive players. And another great prospect at tight end around the spot would be Max Clare out of Ohio State. He isn't being talked about as much because there are other notable pass catchers on his team, mostly Carnell Tate, who's probably going to go in the top 10. But Max Clare has great hands. He only had 2 drops last season and also some great speed off the line. And Max Clare doesn't excel so much in the blocking game, which could be a deal breaker for Sean McVay, who really likes the all around tight end potential to hop in for blocks and not have to switch up personnel play to play. But I think that his accomplishments as a pass catcher could lead to him being a key receiving option, thinking along the lines of, say, Trey McBride with the Cardinals, where he's really just a wide receiver in a tight end's uniform. So Clare is currently projected around pick 60, so he could be a prime candidate for the Rams' second pick at 61 without any movement needed. And these two tight end prospects are pretty similar. They're both primarily working as pass catchers and need additional development in their blocking game. But I think the similar profiles of these players is a benefit. And they're currently straddling the Rams' 61st pick on the big board. So the potential that one or both of these guys is still available with the second pick is pretty high. And with offensive playmakers solidly taken care of in the first 2 rounds, I think that the third round choice should pivot to shoring up the offensive line if they're able to lock these guys down. So the Rams were getting some solid O-line playing last year, and there isn't a need to get a player who's going to make an immediate impact for that reason. So they can instead look at a prospect who might need some more development and then really bank on a player with high upside on their physical traits if they're picking someone at the third spot. And in the third round, I really like Markel Bell for this pick. He's an offensive tackle out of Miami, and he's an outlier for both height and reach. He's 6'9", 350 pounds, with an 87-inch wingspan. That's very, very long. But he's still light on his feet. He's able to combine his size and speed to beat defenders to the punch or keep them at arm's length. Again, a very impressive reach. And he's a reliable player who led the team in starts last season. He's very consistent, and he does not miss a lot of snaps. So Bell is the kind of prospect that teams love to find with elite outlier physicality and a history of coach collaboration and a strong work ethic. So I think he could be a strong choice for the Rams here again, especially because they don't need someone to start immediately on the O-line. So to recap, a wide receiver forward first 3 rounds of the draft, we'd be looking at Mekhi Lemon in the first round, Eli Stowers in the second, and Markel Bell in the third. So if the Rams have the confidence in their analysis of late round tackles like Bell, I think aggressive early moves for offensive playmakers could give them the flexibility they need to grab their favorite late round prospects, while everyone else is still worried about locking down consistent receiver play. But that being said, there are some elite tackle options in the first round that the Rams are definitely going to need to consider. So, with that in mind, I want to take a look at who would be available if the Rams decided to use that rare first round pick and grab some elite tackle play. Now, both the top prospects for offensive tackle this year, Francis Manoa and Spencer Fano, are looking increasingly like they're going to go well before the number 13 pick. However, neither of those names have been associated with the Rams as closely as the next prospect on the board, who's Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle out of Georgia. The Rams actually spent their last day of meeting eligibility with Freeling, so it shows a strong interest in this specific player as well as the position itself. However, Freeling is currently projected to go closer to the 20th pick, which is well after where the Rams are picking at 13. And since the Rams are all about maximizing their draft capital, I think that they're unlikely to make a reach like that in the first round. And instead, they're going to look to trade back a spot and find a new pick closer to where Freeling is actually projected to go on the board. So, with that in mind, let's find some potential candidates for a trade back in the first round. Now, there are heavy rumors that the Lions are looking at Freeling with the 17th pick, so the Rams are going to need to land somewhere before there just to make sure they can grab their guy. So I'm looking at the Jets, who have the 16th pick in the draft. And there are rumors that the Jets want to lock down quarterback Ty Simpson from Alabama, and it may be worth it to them to trade up to 13 to make sure that another team doesn't beat them to the punch. I've also heard rumblings that the Cardinals may be interested. So the Jets also have two second round picks to deal with, the 33rd and the 44th. And for the sake of argument, I'm going to propose a pick swap with the Jets here. So we're going to say that the Jets are going to take the 13th pick from the Rams and give them the 16th pick, because I think that that would square a little bit better with where Monroe Freeling is currently projected. And as a part of that package, I'm also going to say that there's a second round swap with the Jets and taking the 61st pick from the Rams and the Rams getting that 44th pick. So there are a number of teams who can work out similar deals to this one, notably the Chargers or the Ravens, who are both reportedly vying for guard Vega Owane from Penn State and have similar compensation packages matching first and second round picks. But I think that looking at the Jets gives a pretty good approximation for where the Rams could end up if they put together a trade package. So after a thrilling and unexpected trade with the Jets, the Rams would take Monroe Freeling with the 16th overall pick and roll forward into the second round with the 44th pick. Now, looking at who would be available in the second round, a little bit higher than where the Rams are currently projected, I think a dynamic pass catcher should be a priority here, as the Rams' short term priority is still to surround Matthew Stafford with new weapons and help him on a Super Bowl run. So, if we're looking at receivers in the second round, I really like Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. He's more polished than the other receivers in this range, like Malachi Fields or Antonio Williams, and he makes himself open all over the field and isn't afraid to take a hit. And along those lines, he might be the best blocking wide receiver in this draft class, which is a big deal for the Rams. They love to use Puka and other receivers as blockers pretty regularly, and the best way to stay on the field in a Sean McVay offense is really to nail your blocks as opposed to getting production with the ball. So that's a good place to start for Bernard. And the Rams have historically valued all around receivers with strong fundamentals in later rounds, and Jeremy Bernard definitely fits this bill, thinking of Cooper Kupp and again Puka, who were both taken in the third and the fifth, respectively. So this mock covers the Rams' needs for both pass catchers and an offensive line and allows them to expand towards a best available approach for their third round pick, which is the 93rd pick overall. And since the Rams have given more money this offseason to cornerbacks than any other position, I'm going to look at adding on the offensive line with a strong center prospect. That's Sam Hesh out of Kansas State. He's a center, and he's also played guard along the line, so that gives the Rams some flexibility to slot him in wherever he's needed. And this can come in handy for long playoff runs when injuries begin to stack up. It's nice to have someone who can shift around and has some familiarity playing multiple positions. Hesh allowed 0 sacks and committed 0 penalties as a senior. That's the kind of clean play that makes the Rams much more confident plugging someone in as a starter. And he also played through shin splints as a freshman without telling anyone because he was a walk-on and didn't want to get bounced off the team. And I'm sure that's going to gain respect from Sean McVay and especially from Iron Man Matthew Stafford when they hear about the kind of commitment this guy has to playing through all manner of hardships. So Hesh is a little undersized in the position, which is why he's slipping into the third round. But as mentioned above, the Rams are comfortable baking on production and mindset over physical outliers. And I think a strong line carrying over from last year means that he'll be able to lean on his teammates as he's able to figure out his own strengths on the team and not have to jump up and be a really impactful player off the starting line. So to recap this strategy, I think the Rams would trade back for Monroe Freeling in the first round, trade up to grab Jeremy Bernard in the second, and then grab Sam Hesh to round out the O-line in the third. And this path would end up prioritizing the offensive line and provide some exciting new players who could step in before the end of the season to provide Stafford with the protection he needs, not only to win games, but to make it through the full season. So even with the desire to add a new offensive weapon, I think this might be the safest path for the Rams to take to ensure that they get the personnel that they need to make a deep playoff run. But then again, safe is for the actual draft, and this is still very much the pre-draft. So let's have some fun. I want to do one more mock draft here, and this time I want to focus on the best available at every position, regardless of the needs that the Rams have expressed. So this is going to be purely who is the best of who is left. And with that approach, I think there's a pretty easy place to jump in with that first pick at 13, and that is Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon. So Kenyon Sadiq is an athletic freak. He's big, 6'3", and he's fast. He's been able to outrun most of his defensive matchups in college. The tape shows that, and his speed carries over to his yards after the catch production as well. He's not just good at getting open, but good at continuing that speed and having good vision to make some extra yards appear downfield. He can go deep and he can truck over the middle, so he can catch and run anywhere, which is the kind of flexibility that the Rams like, especially if you're taking an offensive playmaker so high. And he's got great hands, so no worries about drops, which I think if you're picking someone that high, you're going to want to be sure that they can hang on to the ball. Again, no shade to Casey Concepcion. So Kenyon Sadiq comes out of Oregon, who have been a sneaky good tight end factory in the last decade. The Rams took Oregon tight end Terrence Ferguson with their second round pick last year. That was their highest pick. So we know they approve of the products of the program. And if they take Kenyon Sadiq here, that would mean that they've enjoyed what they've seen out of Ferguson and trust the development that's coming out of that program. So Sadiq is a hard player to project on the draft board because he's such an outlier, both physically and with positional needs. But there's no doubting the explosive potential that he brings. And with a tight end room that's as secure as the Rams, I think that this might be the right team to risk it on a player like Sadiq. Since they won't need him to step up immediately in the blocking, they have some established players who can cover up for him in that regard, and they can really let him focus on being an explosive pass catcher. So with that depth at tight end, I think that the Rams really are uniquely positioned to grab him in a way that other teams might not be. When you would seem like you'd want an empty room to grab someone so skilled, I think that having depth actually might make a more appealing argument for the Rams to take him. So moving on to the second round and looking at, again, just the best available choices, ignoring positional needs, I really like Malachi Fields, wide receiver from Notre Dame. He's a big target with a huge catch radius, and he's great at creating separation, and he is a contested catch champion. He loves to go up, and he loves to get it. 75% of his catches in 2025 resulted in either a touchdown or a first down. So that's some great situational awareness that can complement the very smart play coming from Stafford, Puka, and Devontae Adams. They're a very thought-forward team. They aren't really leaning on explosives as much as being in the right place at the right time, and Malachi Fields definitely fits that bill. And he's been shown to have strong character traits as well. They say he practices like he plays on game day and has a professional approach. At least that's what the scouts are saying. So a big-bodied catch-hauling target should fit right into Stafford's comfort zone. And he's being projected around the 60th pick, so another prime candidate for the Rams in the second round without having to do any extreme reaching. And it seems like going with the best available in the first two rounds could be a viable strategy for building out the receiving core for the Rams, as long as they don't, massively prefer any other prospects in that spot. So shifting away from receivers in the third round, I think the best available player here would be Chandler Rivers, who is a cornerback out of Duke. Now, the Rams grabbed both starting corners from the Chiefs this offseason, so there's not an immediate positional need. But depth at corner is a big help in making deep playoff runs, and Chandler Rivers definitely has the goods. He's a man coverage specialist with a knack for getting under the skin of his opponents, and he has the skills and anticipation combination to produce big turnover plays and pick sixes. He had 2 pick sixes in his college career. He's never missed a game due to injury, which doesn't mean that he'll never get injured, but it does mean that he plays his game in a way that injury is less likely, which is a desirable trait for a depth ad. And he's a little bit on the shorter side, only 5'9", but the depth that the Rams have at corner should allow them to scheme up some advantageous matchups for Rivers and use him in schemes that leverage his aggressive play style as opposed to lining him up against receiver mismatches. Again, like Kenyon Sadiq, this is something where the depth at the position already for the Rams might actually be a more welcoming sign to bring in this player who has a bit of a different skill set from the people who are currently on the team. So to recap, a best available draft might look something like this: Kenyon Sadiq chosen in the first round, Malachi Fields in the second, and Chandler Rivers in the third. So we've run down a lot of players today, and any of these guys could mix and match into the final draft class. So which players would I be the happiest or the saddest to see in a Rams uniform? Well, I want to start with the positives and go with my happy players first. So the first on my happy list is Malachi Fields. He's big, he's fast, he has good situational awareness, and he provides a different build and skill set from the existing receiver room. He can really go deep, stretch the field, and jump up and grab it. Devontae has good hands, but not quite as big as Malachi Fields is. And his separation and catch radius means he has a lot of heroic big play potential. I'm really imagining him kind of leaping up in the end zone and grabbing something out of the corner. And I also really like Mikael Bell. He's a relatively high value at the pick in the third round, especially compared to other tackles who are going near him. And he has the potential to be a defining member of the O-line, which is a rarity for such a late pick. And a lot of people are leaning on him getting coached up to reach his full potential. But again, that's something I have a lot of confidence in with the Rams. They have a very good staff with not too much coaching turnover this year, which is different from years past. Now, for the players I'd be a little sadder to see in a Rams jersey, and again, this is nothing personal. I'm going to start with Caden Proctor, offensive tackle out of Alabama. There's nothing about his tape that really jumps out to me, and there are a lot of prospects that I like better than him, both higher and lower in the same position. And he feels like a bit of a compromise pick if the Rams can't get one of the elite tackles that they want and aren't able to scout somebody in the lower rounds. So I feel like Caden Proctor, while he could be someone who could be productive right out the gate, wouldn't really have that high flash potential that I would want from someone who would be taken so high, potentially with that first round pick. And another person I would be sad to see in a Rams uniform, surprise, is Monroe Freeling, house favorite, but with the big caveat that that's only at the 13th pick. I think he's a solid prospect, but it would be very unlike the Rams to take him so early compared to his forecast without getting anything back from another team. So I think at the 13th pick, he's a little rich for my blood. I have no problems with him being on the team, but again, I'd want to see some kind of a compensation package made where we could trade back and get him a little bit close to where he's being projected on the draft board. Well, that about covers it for today. And the next time we record, the Rams are going to have made their first pick. So we'll have a better sense of which of these battle plans the Rams are going to be using in house. Of course, the fun of being a Rams fan is that they can always pull out something wacky, especially during the draft. But I think by having clear positional priorities and keeping an eye on other teams' needs in each round, the Rams can build out a draft class that adds value to all of their units and not just their offense. But then again, we'll have to wait and see. Well, that's all the time we've got for Rams latest today. I'm Brady Petrik, and until next time, go Sheep.